Hi, and welcome back. I'm Ashok, and this is now episode number 15, and quite an adventure for us to try and pull this together. So it's always good to, because we're covering such in this hologram, scope of millennia of human developments and quests to get a deeper access to ourselves and each other and nature and reality and source, the source of all being. And I've invited all to join in this unprecedented experiment because and I suggested we haven't had the clarity of the codes. This is a code hologram of the so-called red zone code, the red code of mind operating technology, is a technology of making ourselves a world. And the deep perennial quest of the greatest minds, men and women, great scriptures, enlightenment, wisdom, teaching, science, arts over the centuries to gain and open a pathway, a portal to presence, the fundamental field of being, reality. And we don't have to use religious names, God names, for example. Those are all to be respected as attempts to name what is first. So, first science, first philosophy is the journey of humans over millennia. And this is a stage of our development where we haven't had a clarity of realizing that there are two different fundamental technologies of being a human and living our life and having experience and encountering reality. The technology here that we brought out, which is like more informationalized, and the subject has content and stories and narratives and concepts and emotions and feelings and psychology, all of this here, and all the many narratives in this space. And yet the great first responders, because the infinite source, the infinite force has to be reckoned with. It's operative at every moment, in every iota. It's the presence at every possible aspect of reality, of being, is so profound. It's infinite. And it's infinitely with us and in us and through us, around us, and outside and inside, all of us, all the time. Everyone, no one can step outside of the infinite force. And so the sciences, the deepest first philosophies. First philosophies means the wisdom, enlightenment attempts of the human inquiry and critical thinking to be mindful of our minding and open up and explore the possibility of a more powerful technology of consciousness, which is the blue markers, which is infinite. It's the infinite source. Reality is infinite. Being is infinite. I'm not going to go into that now. What I would like to do with us, because I invited everyone to hold space together, because I invited us to think, and when we look and let's erase, if this is the commotion and the complexity and the vast diversity of human narratives and enterprises and cultures and religions and spiritualities and teachings and attempts and all going on under the influence here. But we're always living under the influence of the infinite. And so if we had not seen the differential between the derivative code of life and the source code, and how and why our great diverse first responders using human genius and ingenuity, we're seeking to open portals to presence. And the experiment we're in, and I'd like to just refresh our minds, bear with me, because I hope everyone will join us in this unprecedented experiment to get to presence, to go from derivative pre-presence to crossing and portal into the life of presence, our primary self and the encounter with reality. So I dramatically removed all of the different silos and packaging that we do normally in this culture, in this space, with all the genius and gifts and talents we have, if we're living under the influence of a technology that talks about reality and talks about the world and processes our experience in this technology, you're going to have profound silos and differential between individuals and within individuals. Our inner life will be packaged into different fragments or quanta, to use that metaphor, and multiplicity over space and time in our lives, not only within us, can be shredded and fragmented with this technology, human relations in between people and between our different belief systems and narratives and forms of life, so that an individual can be just packaged internally, even with multiple narratives, and have not just one belief system or one or story, but many stories going and many personae, but between individuals of different orientations in rational space. This is one form of rational space, and when we go into the source, into first philosophy and first science and source science, we tap into the deeper space of reason. So it's not reason or not reason. Even though mystics who are seeking and tap into the space, we all have access to the fundamental field and realize that these words here, the language we have, cannot report and talk about this. This is mystical union with the source, is a different way of being in language and thought and reason and intelligence and encounter with reality and each other and ourselves. And the great mystics who tapped into this, and we all have this code within us. But what I've suggested, that looking over, say, 2,500 years and beyond of a human journey across the planet in our human family, the codes had not been differentiated and to see the difference between derivative and primary. We didn't have this hologram before. This is a kind of composite hologram of the human condition now. And on this occasion of meditation number 15, building on all the way from 6 through 14, not to mention 1 through 5, but 6 through 14. That's 9 episodes of meditations we've done in this experiment. And in this 15, I'd like to try and breathe, step back, review, get the headlines, analyze it. Let's analyze where we've been. Let's get what are the striking, most salient points in now that we have the hologram of the differential between the derivative code and the primary code, and to see why our deepest of strivings as humans over millennia, the greatest scriptures and enlightenment and wisdom teachings have been saying this is unsustainable. It's a place of suffering and breakdown and nihilism and opinion, and not having grounded life and psyche and awareness, and the movement urgently into the source life, because we're source sapiens, because the infinite code is within us. It's everywhere, all the time. And so there is, in the human condition now, in terms of our self-understanding, wide-ranging silos. We have different traditions and their own traditions with their own identities separate, and we don't see that wisdom and reality is not packaged this way. There are no separate Lego units. We're not Lego entities. There are no Lego pieces in the infinite Unum. I'm doing a kind of review of some of the headlines and to remind us of where we left off in the last 2 or 3 sessions, inviting everyone to play along in an experiment. That if we remove all of the silos, all of the differential, all the disciplinary boundaries and the difference between feelings, emotions, and reason, and the heart and the mind and the body and all of these things that are happening, and open the space up to the ground floor of the infinite code, whatever name we use. This is an infinite space with the infinite language and the infinite axiom that the infinite has a grammar, a logic, a science, a language. All of these are very important. It's not that it's a blank. The infinite in the beginning is a word. And when we say that, it's not just, oh, that's the only name. It's got infinite designations and manifestations. They're not attributes or qualities. You say that the infinite is good. It's not a quality, or the infinite is love, or the infinite is all powerful, the infinite is omnipresent, or the infinite is space-time continuum, or whatever you say. These are not properties in the informationized space that we're so used to and good at. But the unique science of the source and the code, the code, whatever name we use, if we call this the Logos, infinite source of all reality and being, is the Logos, or if we use God names, and say Yahweh, the genuine Yahweh, and the genuine Allah, and the genuine Brahman, or the Buddha's name for this field of emptiness, or shunyata, which is the overflow of reality without pieces and fragments and separations of the kind in the red zone. And that the call of the infinite source, because everything is coded with the source. Everyone is coded. And that's not just to get a privilege. It's everything. Nothing can be without being. You can't be outside of being, the infinite zone. This is not a boundary. This is a recognition of the infinite sign. This is the infinite sign. And what is it? It's presence. What would be the most appropriate designations? But we can't use derivative names in the red coded names for approaching the namology, the symbology, the signology, the ontology is a word for being of what is first. Without any religious names, but they're all included. So there's something about the infinite in first science, source science, whatever name you use, whether you call it the Vedic science of meditative technologies, of Upanishadic Vedic thinking in the Indian tradition, or the Buddha's enlightenment into the source and the code of the source, and the Buddha Dharma, the law, the Buddha law of the field of being, or whether it is Yahweh, the source of all reality, or the Allah, surrender to Allah, or Brahman, the source, or Tao, the name of Tao, or even science, theoretical science, going, for example, physics, moving into the quantum field and quantum reality, and realizing that we're moving to a deeper way of understanding the universe and the cosmos, and so forth. Whatever name, it's important to understand, and this has come out in the last 9 episodes, that the infinite has infinite names. It's a source of all possibility. This is here. It's a source of all. Reality is a source of all. Being is a source of all. So please don't just, when you see these 2 words, source or unum, don't think, oh, that's, or if you say in the beginning is a word, that's just a fragment from derivative thinking of what it really means to be the beginning is a word. It means infinite source of all languages, of all signs, of all symbols, of all possibilities will be in the word. But it's not just a word, it's being. In the beginning, being. What is that? Reality. So you could say, this is reality, or this in the beginning is word, or the beginning is being, or meaning. In the beginning is meaning. In the beginning is goodness. In the beginning is love. In the beginning is omnipresence. What is presence? You can't make it into a thing. The sun is shining through it and even helping us here. It's very interesting through the window. I may have to stop it, but I'm not going to interrupt. I don't know if you can see the shadows being cast by the sun coming out of the clouds here. I may stop in a moment to close the shutters. Bear with me. So the language, a grammar of the primary field with infinite names. They're infinite names. They're not just like 3 or 4 or a limited number. That is in breach of the very nature and logic and science of the infinite. It's infinite in every way, and it's infinite throughout its field, not the ordinary field, but the field of all possible fields, the name of all possible names, the form of all possible forms, the infinite connectivity of the universe. And that's why you say in the beginning is love. Because in that sense, not love that we use it here, but source love is the source. And when you say God is love, using the religious terms, it's not a property of the source. It is the essence of the code of the source. It's holding the entire universe together in connectivity. So I'll pause a moment to stop the window here. So the experiment that we're doing together in terms of the the language of presence, the infinite. And by calling it presence, we're honoring that it cannot be treated as an entity or as a being. Being is not an entity. It's not a substance. It's not with attributes. And that's the derivative code. And that's been tried for centuries. Being is not in the red zone. It calls for a deeper space. And so the experiment we're in the middle of now in episode number 15. And that's why I'm suggesting that I'm calling this episode building on 6 through 14. It's a matter of life and death. It's profoundly serious. This hologram, which is seeking to bring out and clarify what was conflated before. We didn't have the infinite code, and the codes were not marked out, and therefore, as the technologies of consciousness, when we're in this deep and profound code, which the red code, which is derivative, it depends upon the source code. The source code of infinite is pervasive throughout the entire field, and all humans, all beings, all whatever exists is living under the influence of the infinite source. That's one of the principles we looked at before. Every person, for example, but not just persons, everything, every grain of sand, every drop of water is coded with the infinite that never breaks down. It infinitely recurs. Now we're getting to the science and the logic of the infinite. And that's that's why we can't talk about it, because talking about it distances it, talk about it here and separate ourselves. But when we enter into the zone, so to speak, which is what has been building for centuries, when in the yoga we're yoking with it, in the Christ, the Christ is within us. That formula, even if apart from the Gospels or Jesus, there is a science. And what we're exploring together and putting it together in number 15, but we've been doing it since 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, is imagine now we're removing all of the silos and all of it, and just try to step back from privileging this space by default, now that we see the code difference, and to now look at the human amazing journeys and genius, the great scriptures, the great belief systems and teachings here, the great philosophies, the wisdom teachings, life coaches, mystics, artists, performers who have been inspired. All of that's here. And what if we step back and just see that we're contemporaries? Now, this is our experiment. By doing this gesture, we're suggesting, okay, now we're not eclipsing and downloading this space into the red zone. Here we are on the ground floor of being and the language of being and the science of being. First philosophy, first science, the science of all science. Because now when you get to the source, if we can get the code of infinite source, it will pervade every moment, every event, every thought, every pulse of life. It will be presiding always under the influence of the infinite. We're all living under the influence of the infinite. And so we're all, in some ways, to exist, to be, is to be in the space of being. And this is the ground floor of meaning and truth and knowledge, infinite. And we're born as source sapiens that can get decoded, because wherever we're born into a cultural milieu, as we've seen, and the language or languages and belief systems that we're raised in from the get-go, right? We see and process the world in that way. So one of the principles that we brought out in this journey to first science is we are as we mind. Our being, who we are, is a function of the code, the technology that we're using to process reality in ourselves and our lives, and that makes our experience. This makes our world, our experiences. It's informationized. We have content. The thinker has a screen of where everything our lives appears in the space of consciousness, in the space of reason, in the space of emotions and feelings and psychology, where the unconscious is operative. All of that's going on here. And so the experiment we're exploring together, asking everyone, since we're all in this together, we're all in the field together. Whatever our diverse belief system, if we have nihilism, if we're saying that existence is empty of meaning, there is no meaning, it's absurd. That the theater of the absurd, for example, to say there is no meaning here for those responders who are genuinely inquiring and saying there's something empty here. The lights are out. We thought we have a belief system. According to my will, I affirmed a belief system, whether it's in science or everyday common sense or a religious worldview or scripture, whatever it is that gives us meaning, that we're subscribing to some narrative of have meaning. Those who say there is no meaning, when you critically look at it, the meaning collapses. That is an important insight in terms of being a responder to the source, because this is a source of meaning. When we surf into this space, this is a source of life. Source life pervades every possible pulse, even for one who is seeing the emptiness and absurd and denying that there's anything higher. There's nothing higher. There is no meaning. We're in the dark. We're nothing. All of that, you couldn't do that. You couldn't have that consciousness of nihility and negativity and absurdity and the failure of meaning without meaning. No one can be without being funded. You couldn't be without being. And being is coded in all of us. And so, in a sense, we're all living under the influence, always. All life, all narratives, all belief systems, all talent, all genius cannot be outside of the fundamental field of being. And that is source science, the source of all possible worlds, narratives, and so forth. So given the fact that we're all living as if we're pointing, every iota is somehow pointing to the infinite. It's being sourced by the infinite, it's coded by the infinite, and not just human life, but all of the cosmos, every iota in nature is in the recursive infinite source code. And we saw that this word unum is profound. Why? Because once we begin to not approach the first in a derivative code, but begin to cross into a critical thinking, to step back from minding our minding and stepping back into a deeper encounter with the call of what is first. We see that it cannot be divided. It cannot be multiplied. Even though in mathematics we said the different infinites or the different forms of infinite or dot, dot, dot to infinity. No, there is no dot, dot, dot to infinity. There is no way to reach infinity by a finite procedure. That's been exposed for millennia. There is nothing that you can do within this space, in the finite space. The finite cannot, on its own accord, without acknowledging the infinite source that makes it possible, within the confines of the finite, approach and have access to the infinite. There's no dot, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, dot, 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 billions of decimals to get to infinity. That's been shown that the derivative code cannot, on its own accord, treating itself as independent of the source, that's where it blows it, cannot access the infinite. And yet the infinite is holding it at every moment. And so the experiment, again, I'm still reviewing the magnitude of the experiment we're in, that I hope everyone is invited to answer. I'm suggesting that in my journey as a first philosopher, living and studying and with the great first thinkers who of the responders in the human condition, the highest inquirers and enlightened wisdom teachers and mystics and talents and genius that has been responding to the call of the first, I call them first responders. Everyone is living under the influence, even the ones who deny it, and ignorance and evil and depravity and pathology are still being held in the space. But amongst the human journey, there are those gifted ones, talented, who have the ability to rise into a higher frequency in their inquiry, in responding to what is first. Those are first responders. And so the question we're asking, since now in all fields, it's not just in scripture or in philosophy, or the sciences, that first responders have been pioneering openings and portals to presence. So that's our experiment. I'm asking, if you just remove all of these constructs, deconstruct them in access to the language of presence. It's no long thing, no more things, no more units. No, there couldn't be a unit or an individual or an item or whatever it is without the unifying force. Please hold that with us. The science of the infinite is infinitely one. That's intrinsically given to with the code, which is coded with all of us. It's infinitely one. You can't have more than one, and you can't fragment it. It's infinitely united. Therefore, it's a continuum. Reality, being, word. What is first is a continuum. We begin to see that from the very grammar and logic and science of what is infinite. So there's profound information encoded here. I invited us to think. So as we scan the different scriptures and traditions of first philosophy, you can begin to hear, once you remove the silos, and you could see the Moses and Jesus, and the Judaic origins, and the Christian narrative, and Muhammad, and the Vedic tradition of yoga, or the Buddha tradition, Lao Tzu, on, science, and they're all here. We opened up the space, not just for scriptures or enlightenment teachings or philosophers. It's every human being, and we're asking, in the human family, the most gifted men and women, pioneers, first responders, whom do you think has really opened up portals to presence? From the red zone, so to speak, have introduced technologies or intercode clarity and intercode transition, not just when you deconflate the codes. If the codes have been conflated, undifferentiated, I call that the age of conflation, code conflation. And I'm suggesting that this hologram is seeking to end that, to say derivative code is sustained by the source code, and the source code is a deeper scientific technology, mind operating process that cannot be treated as talking about it and speaking about it. We're great at that. So even if a gifted mind is able to tap into this, and we all can tap into this because it's always here within us, and she is beginning to say that I can't. We can talk about it. We're trying to communicate with the people here. If everyday folks, common sense reason, as diverse as it is, speaking from the heart, speaking from the mind, emotional language, all different forms of intelligence here, if for those responders who are trying to bring the teaching of source and the crossing from this code to source code, which is life and death, this is extremely important. That's the main theme of this number 15. Why is this so vital for our survival and thrival and sustainability? Why, if we remain conflated and undifferentiated, and the source code and the derivative code are undifferentiated, which is where we've been. So this already is a huge step, allegedly, in our human journey to being who we are, to ourselves, and to reality, and to truth, and ethics, and goodness, and life, and love, all here. And if we are eclipsed and cut off, if the codes are conflated, I'm calling that the age of code conflation, undifferentiated, we default naturally to the informationized version, the common parlance, common language across the human families of all of our languages. They're all coming from the source, the infinite word. All narratives and beliefs, scriptures and texts and teachings are all here. How does one who is breaking through the confines of being situated here and accessing, how does he or she teach the people at large who are in the derivative code? And the experiment we're doing together is, who would be on your If you don't want to have a list, you want to just have a community of the most gifted men and women of the ages, the great scriptures and prophets, that will be all here in a contemporaneous, because time in the red zone is not the same as presence, infinite. Double bracket time is not separate from space and from mind and from source. It's infinite temporality. It's not, there's only time. And now even certain physicists are saying time is a construct. There is no time. And how do we measure it and so forth, right? And that's been critiqued for millennia. Single bracket red zone time is not the same as source time, as presence, as now. So when we remove all of the fragmentation and ancient, modern, and all the disciplines, and putting arts in one place, and poetry and music and science and philosophy and enlightenment and so forth, all in there, remove them all. We're all in this now, in an open unum, in a contemporaneous, which means that, for example, Jesus is contemporaneous with someone, with Buddha, and Buddha is contemporaneous with someone now in the contemporary space, and Magdalene is contemporaneous with Krishna, and Krishna is contemporaneous with Muhammad, and Muhammad is contemporaneous with Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu with Shakti. All of these, all interconnected in this unified continuum space. And the question we're looking at is, has any teacher or visionary or life coach clarified and opened up the code differential in this hologram to clarify that somehow we humans have to become aware of technology that we're living within? When you say we're in a matrix, right? Another way of saying it, we're living in a technology that has evolved over millennia, and we're here. I mean, if we don't see it, and it's cutting us off by its very nature, and talking information is talking about it, and it's cutting us off, then our journey is unfinished. And when we realize that the most gifted minds and first scientists and the first medicine, source medicine, and source truth, the truth here, that is a continuum, that it's all moving together, it's fractal. It's not units that can be separated. There are no boundaries and packaging. Like, this is all artificial, mind-made by this technology. And in a way, our journey to source, when I say life and death, the gifted minds who have been able to somehow educate the public, and that's the question we're looking at. Can we educate ourselves and the public if we do not differentiate and get the source language, the source code? Did Jesus get this? Did Krishna get this? The Om code? Did Lao Tzu get this? Magdalene get this? Did Moses get this? Which of our great teachers have really served the zone of presence to understand the technology and to face the boundary translation without loss of translation, to help the public, the people, folks in their culture, in their tribe, in their communities, to understand this all-important shift from a derivative form of life and technology that creates fragmentations and polarizations and all kinds of spawns all diverse forms of violence. This has violence built into it. And we haven't seen, if we're trying to understand violence in description and medical diagnostic from whatever lens we're using within the space, I'm trying to understand psychological pathologies or physical or physiological pathology, whatever it is, in our different arts and sciences, and the question of healing within this space. Healing is here. Healing is wholeness. And healing will not happen without somehow breaking the barrier, the technological barrier of a derivative form of self-making and world-making, and to become critical of it, to see it. But this cannot see itself. Somehow the code, that the source code within us has to allow us and make it possible for us to step back, to mind our minding, and gain access to a crossing from a derivative code to source code. Excuse me. I'm obviously racing with my voice here. So the all-important question that we're all looking at together, excuse me, that we're all looking at together is for you, in your mind, once we remove the derivative fragmentation and time packaging of different traditions and scriptures and teachings and arts and sciences and different talents and so forth, and go into a unified community, a continuum of presence on the ground floor where we are, who amongst our most gifted teachers and best source teachers and sapiens, first responders, have really, to you, seen this clearly? And not talk about it here. We're good at that. Please. We have many boundless great narratives that talks about that from here, communicating it unwittingly, using the derivative code and seeking to give the information as teaching and coaching and beliefs and scriptures and gospels and narratives of interpretations. They're all interpreted. Human beings interpret the field. So there's boundless centuries of talk about this, but that implodes upon itself. That's the point. And the great teachers and life coaches and wisdom keepers of the ages have seen that there is a profound challenge and problem to speak this language and bring this technology of consciousness and life making and world making into communication with people who are living under the sway of the derivative code. So what the experiment we're doing, I said I will share some of my answers to the question for you. Do you think this has been seen before clearly? That there's a profound difference between the dominant technology of consciousness and meaning and truth and language and reason and beliefs and describing the world and feeling the world and emotions and from the heart and the mind and all of the different narratives and scriptures and wisdom and brilliant artists and music and all of that's going on. Has anyone opened this up clearly before? I don't see that. In my journey, this differential hologram, the conflation has not been opened up clearly. Not in a way to talk about it and saying that there's dual and non-dual, that is higher, that you can't talk about it, you have to go into it. That telling, wisdom and enlightenment and source knowledge as talking about it and telling. You can't tell this. And this technology doesn't have the capacity to reveal and open access, a portal to a direct participatory engagement in the fundamental field and logic of reality and being. You can't tell it. You can't talk about it. You can't report it. It's not a report. It's not news. That fails. We have that galore. We have that abundant. And it's clear that we're still, the human being is, our human cultures are still labeling in a profound way. And right now, when you pause and look across the planet and the human family with all of our gifts and genius and talents that we've had in scriptures and teachings and wisdom and enlightenment and artists and poets and music and gifted humans and heroes that we're still laboring and proud in a way that's not sustainable. The human family is in trouble. Now, the great teachings of the ages who are seeking to help us to move into a deeper space, have we found the technology of teaching, coaching, that's not going to be telling and reporting and talking about it. Even to say you can't talk about it is to talk about it. To say to the mystical minds that have been saying reality, what truly is truth, is beyond words. That's the reporting, the news here, and it doesn't accomplish the existential inversion from this verse to this verse. That's what we're talking about. And I, in my journey over the last 60 years, as a first philosopher, seeking to be a mindful, intentional first philosopher, studying our great scriptures and traditions and teachings for centuries, from Heraclitus and Parmenides before Socrates, and all the way through, following that unfolding all the way through to the contemporary European, Anglo-American, continental philosophers in the 21st century. Let's just pick out Heidegger. From Heraclitus to Heidegger, something is happening. The Unum is always working. I hope we got that principle. Right? The infinite reiterates infinitely. So any possible unit, I could not be without Unum. To be even an artificial self, an ego-based, separate, alleged, independent individual with my own independent existence and being, even if I'm playing that game, you couldn't be that without Unum. No unit, nothing can be without Unum. So it's Unum all the way. We've seen that. But it's not just Unum, namely for infinite unity, the logic of the grammar of presence reiterates every particular scale, from the most micro subatomic to the macro intergalactic. The Unum principle pervades and reiterates. It's also not just to have an event and experience a pulse of life. To have a pulse of life is to have an Unum pulse. Every possible moment of consciousness, of life, existence is under the funding and being held by the infinite source of being. Another way of saying nothing can be without being. So let's proceed then. I'm inviting all participants with me, holding the space together. I'd love to hear whether you think that this has been done, how is this done, and why is it so hard to make the intercode shift? Not so enlightenment and wisdom and source philosophy, source science is not something that can be processed here. It is profound shift in the code from privileging taking this as first, rather than inversion to sources first. Unum is first. Unum everywhere, all the time. So that you could see, and this is what we've been trying to open up in 11 to 14, and obviously I'm going to have to go from 16 to 20, another 5 meditations, to slow down and go show us how Parmenides and Heraclitus, it's just in the European tradition, unfolding over 2,500 years, that you could see the Unum playing out all the way through. If you go from Augustine to St. Thomas, from the Platonic, Neoplatonic to the Aristotelian, it's playing out. If you go from Socrates and Plato to Aristotle, you'll see the Unum playing out. Something is moving this. If you go to Locke, Berkeley, Hume, to Kant, it's playing out. Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, to Kant, it's playing out. Kant to Nietzsche, and Nietzsche and Hegel. Hegel is saying there's a Geistwissenschaft, a Geist science, Geist means infinite spirit, that's moving all history. And there's a dialectic unfolding. All of that's part of the Unum sway. Descartes' meditations on first philosophy, where Descartes is conflated. I think Descartes is a great example. If he didn't have the code differential to see when he said, I'm stepping back from all of my beliefs about the world and my mind and my body, and because it could all be doubted, and he had the doubt experiment. And the doubt experiment is if there is a code that's eclipsing my rational intelligence and having me live in a derivative space, then the best I can get is opinion by my will. And Descartes was picking up on that. This doubt pervades this place. It's not fundamental truth. Is there anything fundamental? Is there source science? Meditations on first philosophies, his meditations. And when he said I am, did he step back from to say I am here? Was he I aming in the red zone, or was he somehow pioneering inadvertently, without knowing that there's a deeper technology, even though he was seeking the universal missing grammar of the logosphere. He was intentional about the journey to the fundamental universal grammar, first philosophy. Did he realize when he said, I am, he crossed from this I to this I? That would be a different Descartes. So what we've been seeing all along is that once we see the code and that the derivative cannot process the primary, and that it has to be an inversion. You can't tell it here. You can't report it and tell it and give the news in any of the art forms and language intelligence forms, emotionally, or dancing and music and so forth within the space. Music can open us up. A beautiful artistic performance can open us up. We have access to the zone. It's in us all the time. But that's not going to sustain a migration from this stage of our evolution as a human being into source first. and source life, source is life. So pause a moment. So one question is, have there been alternative ways? I'm not saying this is the only way to show the code shift, but this is my way of trying as a logician and ontologist to get a notation to mark out the code issue. This is the code now, derivative code and its relationship to the source code. And the source code is a profoundly unum pluribus. All the diversity is woven together in the unum. That's part of the grammar of first. And it's not a thing. It's not a being. It's not an entity. That's why I use the word presence. Buddha got that. And Vedic science, Brahman, Om, Tao, Christ is presence. How would you get Christ here? For example, if in the beginning is Christ, without Jesus, don't conflate Jesus in the red zone with Christ here. Where would you find Christ here? Well, if we look more deeply into the infinite source and realize that nothing can be without that, then wherever a pulse of consciousness would be, it's going to be related and sourced by the infinite source. And that's the Christ principle right there. Nothing can be without source. So every pulse of awareness or consciousness or experience or life to just be aware, I am, I exist. Just to exist is already to have the Christ principle, which is you're being held by the source. There's God in everything. Buddha, we're all Buddhas, Buddha would say. This is the shunyata, the space of emptiness. Krishna is speaking from this, the question of the avatar. Can the infinite be manifested in a more localized form, whether it's in a Moses or in a Muhammad or in Krishna or Jesus or Buddha or Lao Tzu or Magdalene? I don't want to only use male models here because Sophia, this is Sophia, infinite Logos Sophia, if you use a Greek, Shiva Shakti, Yin Yang, not in the red zone, but the fundamental. Why is there relationality here? There's a profound relationality right here. What is it? That the unum is pluribus. That means infinite diversity. So what? That everything is interrelated. So space is no space without time, and time without mind, and mind without word, and word without word, and I without now. It's all relational. That's all given here. That's the Christ. That's the Krishna yoga. That is the Buddha Dharma. That's ethics. Because if we're all infinitely interwoven in the continuum of the Ulam, then that reality of being is not a separated, objectified space of the self and the other here, rather than I and the other in communion and connectivity and flow and nonviolence. So there's something inherently, from an existential point of view, from the code point of view, violent in privileging the derivative code in our journey to source as source sapiens. We're not Lego sapiens, we're Logos kids, we're source sapiens. And we're being called by our very being, and we're coded with this. We're coded. It's in us. So if Christ, I'm playing across now, after having removed all the barriers and boundaries. So Jesus and Moses and Buddha and Krishna and Magdalene and Rumi and we're all hanging out together in the source, in the source space. We're all respect whatever boundaries we've created in our narratology here, right? On the ground floor, it's all connected and woven together. And we're trying to respect that community and political space of radical interconnectivity. And if we begin to see the deep structure of the Christ is a communion of any possible being with the source, profound link that cannot be bridged. No one can be without being, and we're all being held by being. And there's a Christ principle there. And the Buddha principle can be seen as the global Christ, and the Om principle as a global Christ, and the Islam principle, surrender to Allah, the communion. Rumi, there's a field of judgment, of right and wrong, but there's, I'll meet you there, beyond. There's a field beyond. I'm using the example of Rumi as a Sufi, poet, philosopher, visionary, who saw there's a field beyond right and wrong and good and bad and judgment and this technology. He didn't use the code. I'll meet you there. That's a place of meeting. That's a space of love, a boundless, unconditional love. This is conditional. So if I love you, love here is not the same as open intimacy of our being. We're profoundly other. There's pluribus. The Unum has infinite diversity and yet infinite connectivity without breaking. That's, now we're getting into the fractal science of source. So if our narrative of Jesus, for example, and you're linking Christ with Jesus, and Jesus equals Christ, right? Rather than Jesus say in the beginning is Christ. From the very beginning is Christ. What does that mean? Is if Jesus is not conflated with Christ and equal to as an equation, Jesus is Christ, or I and the Father are one, that kind of utterance. I and the Father are one. No, this is the Father, Mother. This is the infinite. And we adhere in the yoga, so to speak, in the Christology, in the Logos Christ. If this is the Logos, and Jesus is the Logos in the flesh, embodied, teaching and speaking the Logos language, which is very strange to the ordinary common sense language. And the Christ language cannot be naively translated into a derivative form. In that sense, Jesus is the first responder, opening up and call that this is the way. What is the way? Buddha is saying this is the way. Krishna is saying yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, coaching Arjuna. Krishna is coaching Arjuna on the way of crossing into Om, into the space of Brahman, into the space of communion with Krishna, which has that avatar status of the manifestation of a presence, whether it's a Buddha or a Krishna or a Christ, to use three examples, or a Rumi in the Sufi maturation of the Islamic wisdom. That's science. It would be the deeper ground, a global power in these great teachers. And once we overcome the conflation, we begin to see that the truth, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, are axioms of the Unum space, that existence is suffering. It has a cause. It's how we're using our mind. We are as we mind. And when we mind in the Buddha way, well-being flows, nirvana. The kingdom and queendom of source is here at hand. Those kinds of remarks, understood now in a global light of source science. I'll wrap up in a moment. This is huge. I'm trying to bring out several themes at once, and I hope you're not losing them. I'm trying to Unumize in this meditation with you. That This has not been clearly brought up before. The code shift and the end of conflation. Code fusion is profound confusion. Code fusion, which is conflation, the failure to differentiate the profound relationship and diversity between this code and source code. That's conflation. In conflation, we default. Or at least there's no way to get clarity of a journey of going from a derivative code to the primary space of being and reality, a version of ourselves. This is a primary version of ourselves. So that the forms of thinking and teaching where we tell and coach people to talk and communicate this is not just another, there has to be a code shift from treating this as first to the journey to firsting, which is inverting from the derivative to the primary. That is really what is called for. To reach a sustainable life, to be true, our true self, our own flourishing, our well-being, our health, individually and collectively as a human family. Individually and collectively, our great first responders are seeking ways to help us get to what's first, our primary being, reality, direct intimacy and participation and self-awareness and the primacy of what is first, and to understand that we are profoundly interwoven with what is first and with each other. And that is echoed through across different great scriptures. If we love God, we would love one another. Why? Because of the principle of unum pervades it all. That's a more perfect union. So let me conclude this meditation with why this is life and death for us individually and collectively. This is why enlightened teachers such as Buddha would say, this is suffering, existence is suffering, not being. He's trying to call us to the no self, the no self. The self here is not a self. It's not a thing. It's not an entity. You can't talk about it. It's not something with properties. It's not entified. It's beyond that. It's in flow. It's a pulse of awareness. So that, or the wage of sin is death. That formula from the biblical tradition. What is sin? It's a code. It's a technology that cuts us off and objectifies. This fruit, this tree, this code has consequences. That is not the tree of wisdom, of source. And to understand that the entire field pervades every point, to say, and put in biblical language, the kingdom or queendom of source is at hand here. It's everywhere. Right? That's scientific. That's source science. Or we are Christ beings. If Jesus allegedly was a logos teacher, seeking to bring the teaching of Christ, our union with source, with God, to the people, and to help us make the crossing from derivative life that is cut off and problematic, and some kind of deep existential ontological pathology, not just the ordinary kind of mental illness, and all of that's real, but mentation illness, malpractice. Our mental technology can be tripping us up in a derivative way that has profound fallout of pathologies. We've been through that between, from number 6 to number 14, and other performances that I've sought to bring this out to the public over several decades to show we've got to break the trance. We've got to see that this is a derivative and that it spawns profound human pathologies of all kinds that we couldn't see because of the unum. We cannot unumize it and see what seemed to be in different silos and different diagnostic here, diagnostic there. This, really, when we see that this has profound effect across the human condition. And it generates, this is the generator of the genesis of profound human pathologies, ontological, existential. We've developed that before. And so this is not life. This derivative form of culture implodes. So we'll end on this note and then set the way for moving more deeply. What I feel I need to do to help bring this across is to show by looking across our great teachers and scriptures. That's will be the sequel from beyond 50. This is 15, from 16 to 20 and beyond, to take the time to trace the Jesus life, the Buddha life, the Krishna life, the Muhammad journey, the Socrates and Plato, all the way, the Magdalene, all of our great preachers, the mystics, the Sufi teaching, Zoroaster, so many brilliant different experiments to go. The scientists, the brilliant scientists moving into, for example, quantum narratives and brain studies and neuroplasticity and the technologies leading to the internet and to cyber power and computer power and quantum computing, all of that. We need to slow down and look at all of that. And here's the point. If Jesus, as we speak of Jesus in Gospels and the news of Jesus in the Gospels in this space as a narrative, as a belief system, and I say yes to Jesus, and Jesus is Christ, and he is God, right? And we're not aware of the code shift in the language here, in the language here, we're in a way not getting to the Christology, the Logos of Christ. If Jesus is saying the Christ is within all of us, and each human being, not just whatever religion, it's not a religion, it's source science. This is a huge point I'm ending on. That first philosophy, source science, the science of being, of reality, of the ground floor, right, has its own truth here. And it's not a belief system. It's not an ideology. It's not something we subscribe to and say yes or no and vote on with our wills. Truth here is profound. It's unshakable. It's self-evident. The Christ truth here is not yet. Meaning here is not like meaning or meaningless here. Surfing the source is primal source science knowledge. Cognition, being cognitive, is not the same as I have knowledge. I have knowledge. It's not the same. So once we begin to see source science is profound in its medical power, healing power for this disorder of the chaos and the complexity and the fragmentation, the poly, without unum. There is no unum here. The poly, the vast diversity cut off from the unum, cannot find the unum here to find the common ground across the poly. This is unum pluribus. This is where the boundless diversity of poly, not poly here in terms of silos and slivers and fragments, but the holy poly diversity here is unbreachable with the unum. It's unum pluribus. And that is the key to our healing and moving and migrating from a derivative, fragmented, pathological form of life and culture making and self-making and human relations and politics and economics and every aspect of our lives here in the shredder. If you can't see it and see the tremendous fallout, that's not sustainable. Culture here is not sustainable. And so if take some examples, if Jesus we're seeking to, as a Logos speaking and trying to teach the Logos truth, the Christ truth, I am the way, I am the truth. And what's the way is not an individual or a belief system. It's deeper than any ideology. It's not another ideology and the many different interpretations that we have of the Jesus teaching. Jesus is not equal to source. Jesus is teaching in the beginning is Christ. And the Quran, Allah, surrender to Allah. And Rumi, for example, is seeing that there's a field beyond this kind of informationized life and human relations and alienation, and a field of deep flow and love and connectivity. I'll meet you there. right? It's a call to rise, to put first. So this teaching honors the deep Islam, Allah. It honors the Judaic Yahweh. It honors the Christ. It honors the Brahman. It honors the Tao. It honors all of the authentic ways to get to what is first and the space of presence. And if that's so, I'll conclude on this. If we look across the planet now, I happen to be in the USA now. And right now, in 2021, looking across the USA and the holy experiment of democracy, doesn't look good. It's devastating what's going on in the USA. But it's not just USA. Look across the planet and the human family at all different levels. The call of source science is to see the devastation, the pathology, the malpractice as a result of how we're using our minds and the technology, to become critically aware, because we have the code of the logos, of the light of reason. There's a reason here, but it can be rationalism, reasonism, and not source light and reason. This is rational. This is one level of entering into rational space, as divided between the emotional intelligence, the rational intelligence, the heart and the mind, and so forth. Yeah, that goes on here. But source is so profound that the emotional intelligence, the heart and the mind in one, and I and thou, and the breaking those boundaries, and the love force, and the politics and the ethics of the space is profound, urgently medically necessary to heal the brokenness and the shredded, polar disintegration and malpractice of derivative form of being a human being and culture, personally, individually, and collectively. It's not sustainable. Whether my own individual life, it's going to be a midlife crisis, ontological breakdown, existential, and the cultures are going to fail. So what if 1776 founding, for example, we're tapping into we hold these truths to be self-evident. That's huge. We're endowed by God's nature, nature's God, with unalienable rights. We, life, liberty, well-being. And we form governments to protect this person, demos, the people. But demos here is not the same as demos. Democracy here, which is disintegrated and disintegrating in the US, is a deep crisis in the USA lab, for example. But the demos, if demos are the more awakened critical thinkers' awareness in the Christ and Christology, in the Buddha, in the Brahman, in the yoga, in the Tao, whatever name you wish to use, the human culture and family here, the demos here, we the people here, the we here, double bracket we is not the same as we. We the people here has not been working out very well. And if the essence of the vision of the founding 1776 were in fact tapping in for that moment of having clarity and collective wisdom in Philadelphia, to say we're endowed, we humans, Logos kids are endowed, all humans, not just a particular subgroup of the founders declaring it for themselves, favoring themselves, but for that moment, humans are endowed, all humans across all borders are endowed by the source with unalienable rights, intrinsic, inherent rights of life, liberty, well-being, freedom. And that needs to be protected by a form of self-management where we, the people, govern, not we here. That's not, the we here cannot be artificially the collection of scattered ideologies and belief systems and borders. Apparently cannot be managed and governed within the fragmented shredder. And so the civil wars has called for a more perfect union. It's not here. This is a more perfect union for all humans. It's not an American thing. It's a human thing. And our great teachers, whether it's the Buddha nature, everyone is a Buddha, everyone is a Christ, everyone is held by Allah, everyone is held by the light of Yahweh. the genuine names for what is first, illuminates who we are. Who is the human being? We're source sapiens. And we haven't yet crossed into source first. Not me first, not here. And my belief system. This is deeper than belief systems. It's not something we subscribe to. That's an ideology. This place is ideological, but truth is beyond ideology. And if that's true, then we can ask questions like, have we reached USA yet? Is USA here? Or do we have to migrate? We're still immigrants coming in, migrating into the source land of the USA, the land of the free. The journey of Moses to the promised land, the Judaic, is this the promised land? Or is it here? In the Christian, if the teachings of Jesus is this teaching, that there's Christ within us, and we are Christed beings, and we are connected with the source. So Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother is here. And we're one with that, all of us. It doesn't mean we are the source of all. It means that the source reiterates at every point. So I and the Father, I and the Mother, I and Sophia are one. Not one in this sense of identical, equal, I equal. That's a mistake. That's a conflation mistake. A conflation of code mistake. To mistake this language with this language. I and the source are one is a universal axiom for everyone. Everyone is a Buddha. And what is Buddha? Surfing the field of flow and interconnectivity. Zen, life in the zone, the Christ, Christology, the Sufi communion with the field of unity. All of our great scriptures and teachings seen here is going to be a different take than in the ideology according to our will and our interpretation of it. This is unsustainable. If there's a consensus, an unum consensus, looking without the boundaries and silos of our great teachings here, seen in the light of unum in this space, it's going to be a different revelation of of the teaching and the code shift and the intercode transition. So that is Christianity here? Or is Christianity getting to the source of the Christ teaching, the Christology? Is Judaic wisdom here? Is it laboring under identity? Or is it moving into loving God with all our heart, mind, and soul, which is code first, source first? This is not honoring source. So across the board of the human family and all of our arts and sciences and disciplines, you can ask, since there's a profound difference between the narrative here and the code shift into placing it here. If being a follower of Christ is here, then how many of us are Christian? With all of the vast millions and diversity of Christianity, are they here? Or are they tapping into the global Christ? And the global Christ doesn't compete with the global Buddha or the global Islam, global Allah, or the global field of the cosmos. If science here, is science immune from having to face the code issue? Is scientific technology and epistemology and evidence to the lens of the mind? And that keeps changing. The lens keeps changing, with the Newton lens, an Einstein lens, and from genetics to epigenetics. All of these different, when you change your lens, you change your story. Change your lens, you change your story. Change your story and change your mind. That all can happen here. Is science, of the most advanced, respected science, free and immune from facing the code issue of source science? Can science here, for all this, and technology here, is it immune from facing the source of all technologies? The technology of presence. There's no technology that could be funded by this source technology. No AI computing intelligence and genius of the most quantum can really be without a source. If this is all we've got, and this is AI computing logic, and then yes, the human beings are computer sapiens, cyber sapiens. But that's not what we are. We're source sapiens. That has not been seen. So we'll end on this note as an invitational thought. Has this been seen? I think not. Help me understand that it's been seen clearly and brought up notationally, not just talking about it. We talk about this higher and lower and all. It's not news. You can't give news and beliefs speaking to the will of the audience here. It's got to somehow step back and see this and mind or minding. It's a critical term from this kind of informational to meditative intelligence, unum intelligence, source intelligence, the ultimate intelligence of awakened rationality and knowledge and heart and mind and soul and emotions and feelings and psyche and of the self and of love and of culture and of nonviolence and of nirvana. To say the kingdom of source is at hand is a truism. It's obvious. So I'm inviting everyone, wherever you are situated, as a scientist, I invite you to say, have we faced the code? We have scientists in looking for evidence sufficiently looked at the mind operating technology, the ultimate technology that we're using to do our science and look at the evidence and develop our theories and revise our frameworks and change our paradigms and shift our belief systems and so forth. That's all going on here. Have we, as scientists, faced this? As Christians, have we faced this? As Jews in Judaic, have we faced this code issue? As Muslims, conscientious Muslims, have we faced the code issue of a global Allah, a global Yahweh, a global God, a global Brahman? A global mean its source. How many profound holy names are there for the infinite source? Have we faced it? Have we faced our human political attempts of democracy? Have we faced the possibility of demos? The demos, the people, we the people, is deeper than the wills and votes and mind of derivative form according to your ideology and belief systems and party affiliation and cultic behavior and tribal thinking and group thinking. Here is democracy here, real democracy, or is democracy deeper than we thought? This thinking is not yet becoming an awakened culture, a demosology, of self-governance, where there's no external government to control the freedom and autonomy of every sacred individual. This is sacred space. This is not sacred space. Sacred space surrounds. This artificial mind-made space by our wills and behavior and interpretations and so forth is in sacred space. But sacred space, the temple is not here. The sanctuary is not here. The sacred human is not showing up here. This is the sacred. When we're in the source, which is the intimacy with the source. That's sacred life, sacred culture. This is love. This is human relations, intimate connectivity and care, and honoring the environment and the ecology, and the fact that we exist and are gifted by the source. So gratitude is here. Thanksgiving is here. Honor is here because the infinite is calling on all of us to recognize it's infinitely ever higher. It's always higher. That's honor and giving thanks and gratitude, not in this sense, but in this sense. So I'll conclude on this note, and what I'd love to do is take a break from this, and I'll start 16 to 20. I'll envision another sequel. And the point there would be to take time and look at many of the great teachers and teachings and scriptures and individuals, arts, sciences. I want to look at music. I want to look at the most advanced scientific thinking. I'd like to look at creativity in the human arts, in music, in performance, in dance, every aspect of human genius and culture, not just so-called philosophy and scripture only. That too. I'd like to take the time to look and see the ways in which our greatest genius is responding to the call of what is for. And we have great moments in the zone. We have spontaneous moments of being in the zone of peak performance. And so I'd like to take time in the sequel. Please join me. I hope you'll join me and help. Is the path to save the devastation going on in the human family, the wars and violence and objectification and racism and sexism and all of the different malpractice and self-harm and violence and everything, violence to the degradation of nature, all of that going on here, can we solve it by migrating and maturing as we, the people, across the human family, across the planet, the human family, joining in a genuine union and pluribus, where we find our true diversity. Each person, more than any label, every person is holding a sacred space in the infinite dimensionality of presence. That sacred space, everyone is unique. And everyone is woven together with nature and with the cosmos. And so the lesson from this, in episode 15, a matter of life and death, I'm calling this, to see the urgency of facing the code issue and of rectifying the distortion of using the derivative code first and really overcoming that and entering into primary being, the primary self, the source, honoring the source, intimacy with the source, which is the call of our great scriptures and enlightenment teaching. Wisdom is not more knowledge here, or not a narrative here. Wisdom is the code shift from derivative to primary. Enlightenment, putting source first. Scriptures of the highest order, source first. Thank you. I hope I didn't keep you too long. Thank you. This is a matter of life and death. And the greatest activism, I keep saying I'll end this now, but this is important. What would be the greatest beyond Gandhi and King and Mandela and other great moral heroes trying to address the apartheid and the violence going on and the colonized situation and objectifying people and subjugation and end of colonial life and so on. And let's say, take the situation in the USA. What would be the most powerful transforming act politically in the life of the people to finally end the gross malpractice taking place with people who are highly intelligent and gifted in so many ways, and yet trapped in a profound meltdown of the failure of democracy here? Across the planet, wherever the violence is, in the Middle East, in Russia, Ukraine, everywhere, in Pakistan, India, everywhere, all across the planet. What is the most powerful political activity or force that we've not yet entered into? Maybe I should pose this as a question. If it's possible to tap the source force, the truth force of being, of reality, of we the people, individually and collectively. If we, in the American USA lab, could realize that we can't find we the people here because we're in a place of civil war, of breakdown, of the clash of cultures and worlds and ideologies and interests by our wills. Is there a political act that the people can come to with leadership and vision that will truly leave the malpractice and the pathologies of the culture here? Yes, I think there is. The call of Jesus, the call of Buddha, the call of Krishna, to mention, that's what we would say, great scriptures, to enter the Christ, to enter the Buddha, to enter the yoga, to enter the Brahman, to enter the Tao, to enter the Ubuntu, I am, you are, on and on. The Magdalene, the feminine wisdom embodiment, Sophia's embodiment in wisdom, the Shakti energy. Is there a way to overcome the devastation of human dysfunction and pathologies, individual and collectively, in our political space across the planet? Yes. And we haven't tried it yet. It is to first is first. Source force. This is the truth force. And whatever we've tried here to solve the fragmentation and civil war within the code, intramural civil war, we haven't faced the intercode, the war between the derivative code and the primary code. That's not just a cold war, it's a code war, if you want to use that metaphor. It's a struggle to not let the derivative dominate and eclipse the primary. The source code rules. It has always ruled, but we're distorted. And I'm suggesting on this concluding note, that's why it's a matter of life and death, because this is, in a way, a cultural Titanic. It's dysfunctional and it's deconstructing itself because it's separated from the source, from reality, from being. And the path to liberation from being self-colonized by a mind-operating technology that's generating cultural meltdown and disaster is to see it and migrate according to the wisdom of first signs across the planet, our great scriptures understood here. That would be the ultimate political force. It's not our force, it's source force. To honor source as first. Imagine in the USA, we the people realizing we're not we the people here. It failed 250 years. It didn't work out and it's a disaster. And there's no way to solve it here. And so it's not a matter of protest and resistance and boycott or any of those tried methods that we have. Something deeper and untried awaits us across the human family, all of us, all cultures. It is to face the wisdom of source science. It's a scientific issue, not a wish list of what I believe and choose to believe, and my vote and my will and what I like and don't like. That's not it. That doesn't work. It is the source science. It's saying we've got to honor first, and therefore to not be stalled within the derivative form of our evolution and human development and cross into the intimacy with reality, with being, with truth. That's justice. Truth is justice. This is unjust. Why? Because it's a crime against the source. Being stalled within the space is a cut against our honoring source. There's malpractice built into this situation. And medically, this is where wisdom and enlightenment and awakened human life, in the sense of awakened is not here, but awakened is source first. That would be the most political, powerful act. Imagine the nation pausing to look at this together and say, this has failed. There's no democracy here. There's no we the people. And our great teachings, the Christ teachings, the Buddha teaching, the Krishna teaching, the wisdom teaching, the Magdalene teaching, the Sophia teachings of love, we haven't really entered into that form of culture and being a human, a source sapien, a logos sapien, a Sophia sapien. We've been Lego sapiens here, but not source. We're still on our way to realizing mature human development here. That would be the greatest political force imaginable. If we, say the USA, can truly begin to see that we're not we the people here. We're a lot of we's, a lot of peoples, and a lot of ideologies, but we're not together in the noble space of a polis, of political culture. So that in this respect, if you take Plato's, until wisdom resides in the culture, there will not be justice in the society. Understood now, putting Plato here in this space. Until wisdom rules in our lives. And there's no wisdom here. This is not true wisdom or enlightenment. And enlightenment is a birthright for all humans. It's the democratization of enlightenment. All humans are source sapiens, all of us. Unalienable right to life, liberty, well-being. Equal opportunity for all, to be individual and diverse in the deepest way. This is not a meltdown of my diversity. The infinite unum is infinite pluribus, and this is where the free-range human arises together in non-violent communion and community and mutuality. Please consider that we have the potential of a profound access to source force, truth force. That will be the medicine that heals the brokenness in our human family. That's a matter of life and death. Thank you very much. We'll resume. Thank you.